Hello, my name is Levon Afeyan, and I'm speaking to you today from Montreal, Canada. This interview is part of a project organized by the Armenia 2041 Foundation, founded by Nubar Afeyan and Ruben Vartanian. We call it Ministry of Future Affairs. Launched earlier this year, there will be a series of peer to peer interviews. We will attempt to cover a wide range of topics, including science, education, healthcare, politics, and business. Obviously, we will keep on themes relevant to Armenia and Armenian diaspora. The idea is to have a discussion and have our audience get to know people in different way than a formal interview. So this is meant to be informal and conversational. I am very pleased today to have Greg or Kourken Sarkissian from Toronto, Canada as our guest. Kourken I know you're better known as Greg Sarkissian, but I hope it'll be okay with you if I call you Kourken today. So welcome, Kourken, and thank you for accepting our invitation. For a long time, I knew you only as the man behind the Zoryan Institute, which you co founded in 1982 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and later in Canada in 1984. In 1990, you took on the role of chief strategist of the Institute, and you have been its president since 1995. Along with your colleagues and board members, you established the Genocide and Human Rights University program in partnership with the University of Toronto, which has been running for 20 years now. As director of economic affairs of the Institute's two journals, you initiated a partnership with the University of Toronto Press for Diaspora, a journal, Transitional Studies and Genocide Studies and Prevention, followed by Genocide Studies International. As recognition of all the work you have done, in 2019, you became the recipient of the Order of Canada, one of the highest honors in our country, in Canada, of course. Not too many people know that you, in fact, are actually a mechanical engineer by education, having graduated from the University of California in 1972 and have had a very successful and impressive career as a builder of multiple construction projects. Plus, you own and operated many specialized manufacturing companies. So, I would like to start on a personal side. Back to your teenage years, what were you like, and what was it like growing up as an Armenian in Lebanon?
Well, I was a student at in an evangelical high school in a district called Ashrafia in Beirut. Uh, it is a parochial school, and I would say that it was in the sector of the city where prominently Christians had lived, and also huge community of Armenians lived. So basically, it's an Armenian evangelical high school where we had Armenian, Arabic, French, and English language classes, and teachers from various backgrounds, including some Americans. So the prior to that, I went to parochial school again, but it was an Armenian Orthodox school where there was more teaching on history, on our nationalism, patriotism, and of course, more Armenia focused, Armenia um, emphasized type of education. Uh, then, from my teenage age, I uh, became a member of what is called Zoryan Ashagadagan, or student association, which was in those years there was a within the auspices of Armenian Revolutionary Federation. Then I went through various rank and files of that. Zavarian then went into what is called for youth organizations, and eventually, when I graduated, I left Lebanon, and I also left everything had to do with political party and political indoctrination. Came to States right after high school graduation, and I found myself smack in the middle of social upheavals in the United States, the Vietnam War, anti-establishment movements, etc., which impacted my life and eventually left me with one objective or maybe obsession to change the world. And that has been a motivating power for me, or motivating reason for me to do whatever I've done since my graduation from university.
So in the late 60s, you moved to North America to attend the University of California. Once you moved to North America, how did the idea of the Zoryan Institute come about? In other words, what prompted you to conclude that studying the Armenian genocide in a scholarly manner was necessary to help define who you were, or perhaps who we all are as a people?
Well, the Zoryan Institute is not only a genocide studies institute. There's much more to that. I will come to that later on. But to your first question, that how the idea of Zoryan or that similar institute came in my mind, it really has few, I would say, historical, for me, events that had impacted my understanding of to how to approach to issues of history, and in the exploration of who I am, what constitutes me in terms of identity, etc. My mom and dad were orphans. My father was orphaned from both sides. He came from a family of 9 brothers and sisters. Everybody was killed except his youngest brother and himself. He was taken to Turkish orphanage to be Turkified, and his younger brother was saved by Arabs, was raised as an Arab until the age of 20, at which point my father found him and tried to save him from, or bring him back to Armenianism. My mother's side of the story was different. My grandfather was a prominent businessman in Urfa, and he was hung there as a businessman. But my grandmother, who was pregnant at the time, had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. One of them my mom. So as everybody else in that community, they had to go to the death marches or be killed. But miraculously, my grandfather's partner, a Turkish man called Haji Halil, he came and took my grandmother, his sister, their children, together 7 children, to his house and hid them in his house, in the attic of his house, for over almost 7 months, until my grandmother delivered the baby. This man, a Muslim, pious Muslim man, who saved my grandmother's family, and of course my mom and my uncles and aunts, he would go to mosque every Friday with his family so that my grandma and with her sister and the children can come down and clean up themselves and wash, etc. And every night this man would take a huge container of food to all these 7 months to mouths to feed. Now, this man had taken a tremendous risk. Had they found about him hiding Armenians, they would have burned his house and hang him in front of his house. Not only that he did that, but he also made sure that once the baby was delivered, he took the entire family with the kids to the train station to make sure that they are securely traveling to Aleppo. Now, this man's name, as I said, Haji Halil, my parents did not talk to me about Haji Halil until my grandmother, in his morning prayers, I could hear when he's reading the Bible, he was praising Haji Halil's name and his memory. And when I inquired about Haji Halil, she explained to me as who this man is. So here it is. I was growing up. I was one of the few people who had I was lucky person to have aunts and uncles and grandmother. A lot of people did not have any surviving family members or aunts or uncles. So on one side, I studied the history of genocide and what the Turkish government planned for its non-Muslim, non-Sunni communities. The reason I say that because it wasn't only Armenian genocide. There were Armenians, Assyrians, Greeks, and even certain sects of Islam, like Alevis. They were persecuted and killed. And but of course, Armenian genocide was planned and executed by the government or the committees that they had created. So on one side you have that story. On the other side you have a Turk, a Muslim Turk who's saving your family from complete destruction. So this dichotomy created a tension in me, and I want to learn about this a lot more than what my grandmother just told me. That's one side of the story that impacted me. Another story that impacted me was I was either sophomore or third year university kid. Sorry, sophomore, I guess. I had just moved to California, and I saw on our campus there was a seminar or conference that was about about genocide and media organized by children of second generation survivors. So I thought, hey, I'm a second generation of a survivor. Maybe these are Armenians who are organizing. So I walked in, and I found out that it was organized by a student association called Hilal. And when I walked in, they put a kippah, I think they say, on my head, and they took me all the way to the front chair. And the guy next to me said, he started talking to me. He first said shalom, and he started talking to me in Hebrew or Yiddish. I didn't know either one of them. So when I told him I don't speak either one of them, he said, well, you're amongst your people. Don't be afraid. You can talk your language. I said, listen, I'm not a Jew. I don't have these languages. He said, what are you? I said, I'm Armenian. I said, oh, you're the lost tribe. So you're welcome to listen to this lecture. And the lecture there was a professor on the podium, and she was showing on the screen a newspaper, an American newspaper. If I'm not mistaken, it was Chicago Tribune. My memory is betraying me here. But on the paper, the front page, there was a picture of a man taken almost 40% of the front page. This man has beaten his dog to death, and people were at arms complaining that this man has to be punished. And the local authorities at that time, they were saying that there is no legislation, there is no law to punish this man. So this was front page on that Chicago Tribune or whatever that paper was. Then the teacher said, let's turn to page 26. And again, page 26 was on the screen. On the left side of the page, at the bottom, there was again a picture of advertisement of swimming trunks. And underneath that also took about 40% of the page. And underneath that, there was 1 inch by half an inch, a couple of lines saying that today the hooligans have entered a Jewish home and they killed 11 people. And then she stopped and she said, imagine the life of a dog on the first page, 40% of the front page of a paper, the life of 11 people killed, 2 lines on page 26 on the huge advertisement picture. That impressed me so much that here we are, another group of people who have had genocide or Holocaust as part of their history. They're dealing intellectually with how media impacts, how opinions are made, how societies are moved to kill. And I said, boy, we have nothing like that. All we learn about is the Turks killed Armenians. That's all. And that was the triggering point in my mind as to why don't we have an organization or a community establishment or any kind of academic center that deals with this issue intellectually. And I had a childhood friend, Gerard Ibaridian, who was also, how do you call it, my director or varich in Zabarian movement. He came years later. We studied in the United States. He was ahead of me. And I was a waiter putting myself in school, and he was selling incarnation ice cream to put himself in school. And we used to talk about issues like this. And one day in late 1970s, I was in his home in California, and he brought the idea of setting up an institute that deals with the forces and factors that shape Armenian life, and that we need to research and understand our contemporary past so that we can understand our present. And that grabbed me, and it grew in me, and that whole idea. And eventually, Zoryan Institute was established, and we opened our doors some 40 years ago, 1982, either February or March, I can't remember now exactly. So that's how Zoryan Institute became an idea that became reality through the circumstances that I went through in my life.
So, very interesting story, Kourken. So as a descendant of genocide survivors, you were born in Syria, raised in Lebanon, educated in the U.S., and are now living in Canada. Let's talk briefly as to how this compound identity shaped your life, and how has this affected your outlook on life in general?
Oh, that's a tall question. It takes hours to talk about it, but I'll try to give you a very quick reply. I sometimes people ask me, "What are you?" and I hesitate to answer, "What am I?" and then I've come to. I was interviewed in this respect as to how do I define myself or identity. Okay, in my passport, it says I'm born in Lebanon, so I don't know how that happens. When on one side they say I'm born in Syria, and the passport says I'm born in Lebanon, so I can't answer that question. But anyway, I grew up in Lebanon, which is an Arab country. I was born in an Armenian family, as I described to you a moment ago. I left Lebanon, or in Lebanon, we had to learn in several languages. As I said, French, English, Arabic, and Armenian, because Lebanon had just come out of French mandate in 1947. So French was very much part of our culture there. Then I come to United States and eventually come to Canada. So I'm rooted in Armenian culture, but I'm from Anatolia, so we have a lot of the Anatolian, I would say, traditions at home. I mean, I'll give you for an example. Simple things, traditional things. When somebody travels, my grandmother who used to say, "Don't wash or clean the house. It's not a good luck." Or if somebody comes from a distant travel, they kill a lamb or a chicken or something, and they donate to the church, and they put their hands in the blood and they put it on the wall or something. This is Anatolian. This is not an Armenian tradition, but it was. I saw it when I was growing up. That was part of my culture. Then you come to the United States at a time when there is social upheavals, there is Vietnam War, there's anti-establishment movements. They called me at the administration office. They told me that, "Greg, you have come late to the university. Our dorms are full. There's one dormitory room available, but you have to share with a black man." For me, I had no idea what is black man or blue man, because in Lebanon, as you know, we had all the same people. So when I said it doesn't matter to me, they were shocked that I am willing to live or to be a roommate with a black man, a fantastic man and fantastic guy that unfortunately was drafted and gone to Vietnam, and he died there. And that also impacted my life. That such a wonderful person. He was the only black man in a private high university in Indiana, composed of 5,000 students, and I lost that friend of mine because of Vietnam War, and I became very radicalized. And in those days, also there was a lot of question about roots, and and the African diaspora and the roots. Who are you? Where are you coming from, etc. And imagine when I first came to the United States, there was still signs of no dogs, no blacks in front of restaurants. And now, in between 1965 and 1965, I believe, to 1968, when the riots started in major cities in the United States, sort of that changed, but not really. The undercurrent of racism is still there in most of the world, and especially in the United States, because it's a very difficult place to govern. There are so many races and nationalities and religions there. So all these impact you, formulate your identity. And they asked this question to Charles Aznavour, saying that, are you French or an Armenian? He said, I am a cappuccino. So in fact, I am a cappuccino too. A little bit of the milk from Lebanon, a little bit of United States, a little bit of Canada, a little bit of Armenia, but it's still the cappuccino. So if that explains to you how I define myself, so it is, I am a child of universe. I'm a citizen of universe. And I tell you, coming to Canada and finding multiculturalism as part of our constitution, I find myself truly at home in Canada. It's because it fits my identity. There is no contradiction of my being a human, being an Armenian, being a Lebanese, or being an American or a Canadian. There's no contradiction for me. So that's how I define myself. I hope that answers your question.
Very interesting. Thank you. Yes, of course. So I want to switch topics a little. What would you say is the crucial difference between the perception of Armenia and Armenianness if we compare Armenians who live in Armenia and those Armenians who live in the diaspora? Again, what do you feel? Is there a different perception of Armenianness between these two groups of people?
That is, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, but I tell you, I found the Armenians in Armenia normal people. I find the Armenians in diaspora abnormal people. And I maybe this is very harsh way of description, but the reason why I say normal people, because when you're born in a country where it's your country and your culture, you're not worried about haya bahbanum, as they say, to keep your culture, where you're used to see good people, bad people, businessmen, teachers, doctors, and also some not very good people, including prostitutes, maybe. So they're living a normal life in any country, that any people that live in their own respective countries. Whereas the Armenians in diaspora, they have this utopic understanding of what Armenia is and what it should be. And that Yergir Trachtavayr, whatever the hell, whoever the hell came with that definition of Armenia, Yergir Trachtavayr, it was a utopic idea of Armenia. And when I first went to Armenia in 1973, I had both incredible pride in me that I am in a country, but also I had a lot of disappointments, personal disappointment, that I did not find Armenia the way I thought it was. I thought it would be. So Armenianness, what does that mean, Armenianness? I mean, that question is, that's why I'm having difficulty to answer. Is it Armenianness means that you're concerned about the well-being of your people? Is that what Armenianness is? Is Armenianness is to continue the survival of our culture, which is, we claim that is 5,000 years old. So what do you mean by Armenianness, Levon? Because if I don't understand the true meaning of that word, it's very difficult for me to answer that question.
Well, we can talk about this for a very long time. What I meant by Armenianness is when we discuss with Armenians in the diaspora and they claim that I'm Armenian, they identify themselves with something which I call Armenianness, and the preservation of that Armenianness. Does that include language, family traditions, culture, alphabet, their diasporan, their institutions? All of those things together is how people decide what Armenianness is. And what my interest was that you've traveled to Armenia very often, and of course you're very well versed in the diasporan communities, at least the Western diasporans. Do you see a major difference between the perception of what Armenianness is in a diaspora as what it is in Armenia? But again, time is very limited today. This could be a topic on its own.
If we're going to separate culture from science, education, economy, military training, security, then we're doing a disservice to ourselves. These are all interrelated issues. Now, on the other hand, I have heard some people say, for example, in diaspora, these Armenians in Armenia, they're trying to negotiate with Turkey, or there is a rapprochement with Turkey, etc. And here we are commemorating genocide, etc. My answer to them generally has been, look, you are commemorating genocide. These people, the Armenian youth, are in the trenches protecting the country with the bullet of the enemy possibly coming right in between their eyes. So who's more Armenian here, you or us? Are the Armenian young men in Armenia defending the Armenia, or us going to streets and we're going to say Gharapagh, Gharapagh, whatever the heck we're saying it. So I don't know. It's very difficult to deal with this question. Okay, it's a tough subject, and also there is another dimension that you need to understand. Like, I am a second generation. My parents were immediately survivors of genocide, but a lot of my age group people are third, fourth generation of survivors, and my children's age, they're the fifth generation of Armenians. So the cappuccino that I was talking about, maybe my father was 90% coffee and 10% milk. I am maybe 50% milk and 50% coffee. My children are maybe 90% milk and 10% coffee. So it's our generations are evolving. They're assimilating, they're integrating, and eventually that percentage of Armenianism is getting less and less in them. So, but that doesn't mean that they cannot go back. They may not go back and give much more than an Armenian who has a 90% Armenian or 100% Armenians. And we have examples of that in our recent history. If I could give you one name, Monte, who's the third generation, fourth generation American Armenian, he went and gave his life for Armenia. So I don't know. It's very tough question, that question, Levon. I don't want to venture there. It is up to you. How do you see yourself, and what is important for you? As I said to you, if it's only Haya Bahmanov, it's not enough for me.
So one more step forward, and we're almost coming to the end. I would say many experts have concluded that bringing the population of Armenia close to 5 million mark is essential for its viability and security. So populating Armenia seems to be a natural objective that all Armenians should strive towards. Yet this subject is rarely discussed and, dare I say, often discouraged in the diaspora. Why do you think that is, and how could that be changed?
Look, I have a pen in my hand. If I let my fingers, that fan will fall down because there is a gravitational law that dictates how that pen is going to go if I let my hands off. So there is, when they say, when you talk about going back to Armenia, we know in the after Second World War, a whole, from diaspora, many hundreds of thousands of Armenians went back to Armenia. because there was a fear that if we do not have enough people there, we will lose our status as a republic. And Armenians from the West, from the free world, they went there. Now, these Armenians were hardly out of Armenia. They were like the first generation or the survivors themselves that they decided to go back because they were refugees in various parts of the world and they had not totally integrated or assimilated. 5 generations away, that's even tougher. Now, and why it's tougher? In 2015, I was reading an article. World Bank was telling that the average salary, daily salary of an Armenian in Armenia was $5 per day. And all the Armenian newspapers and anything that you read about Armenia between 1990 or between 1980s, late 80s or early 80s, to right after independence, within, let's say, following 10 years, almost 1.4 million Armenians left Armenia. So the momentum was Armenians leaving Armenia because, as I said, the gravitational law was working. They had to find places where they have future for their children. They didn't see future for their children in Armenia. They didn't see their security in Armenia. Whether that's, I don't want to go into politics here, but there were many reasons, political, social, economic reasons, that people left Armenia. So when you go and teach to your children that you should go to, even the Minister of Diaspora said Ari Dun program, which is come back home. It didn't work because you cannot fight against the nature. The nature was Armenia was blockaded with their neighboring countries, economically was in terrible shape. There was corruption. There was all kinds of reasons for people leave the country. So if you go to an Armenian and say, why don't you think about going back to Armenia if you feel such an Armenian, he will look at you sort of, what's the matter with you? You have no idea what's going on in the world, what's going on in Armenia? I mean, again, it has to be natural. When the revolution took place, the government claimed that for the first time, Armenians were emigrating from abroad to Armenia. I hope that was true, and I hope that will be true. But it has to be for natural reasons. If I feel that I am a better place in Armenia for my family to survive, to be secure, to be well educated, to have a job, these are the priorities for me as a parent. And then I think about my Armenianism. Of course, the only reason why I pick up Armenia because it's a homeland for me. That's how I feel. It's a homeland, but it has to give me something equal or better than Canada to go there. Now, this is not maybe very patriotic for you, but this is reality. This is how I say the forces and factors that shape your reality, and this is part of our reality.
Thank you, Kourken. Our time is limited. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I hope we'll get another chance to do the same thing. Thank you very much again, and we'll see you later.
I hope I did not disappoint you with my answers. Take care.
Never.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.